everybody, welcome back to the channel. About a month ago or so, we demonstrated one method of sharpening high-speed adjustable threading die. And I mentioned that there was another way to do it, so today we're going to go through that. If you happen to miss that video or you're interested in seeing it, I'll put it up at the end of this video so you can find it easily. To start with, why don't we take a closer look at threading die. Threading dies generally have a tapered lead-in on both ends of it, and that's what actually does the cutting. But if you look really closely, you'll notice that one of them is considerably longer than the other. So this one is that long, and then around the other side, we've got one that's noticeably shorter. And I look at this as the short side would be good for finishing off a thread, coming right up to a shoulder. The side with the longer lead-in is going to be better for starting off your thread. It's this lead-in area that we sharpened in the last video. Again, I'll put that up if you're interested. Today, we're going to be taking a lick off of the face of the tooth. It might be a little challenging for you to see this, but the face of this tooth actually provides a rake angle to the cutting edge. And it's the sort of tangent area where the circle meets the cutting edge. It ends up having a relief behind it, and that really improves the cutting action. It's important that we maintain a positive rake angle as we sharpen the face of this tooth. It's not as critical that it's exactly the same rake angle as what's existing, but we do want to keep it as close as we possibly can, basically by eye. It's probably important to mention that one of these tooth faces is going to be actually used when we're using a particular end of the die, and the opposite tooth face is going to be used when we're using the other end of the die. Now, you could do both. We're just going to do one of them today, and I'm not even going to be fussy on which one I do. The method I'm going to use to do this today is I'm going to take a mounted point wheel that is close, just under the diameter of the hole, and you can see this is very close fit, but it is slightly less. And we're going to establish our point of contact in such a way that we can maintain our height and keep that rake angle at an angle that we're happy with. It's also going to be pretty important that the stone is able to pass all the way through the die and out the other side, and that'll make sure that the stone wears in a cylindrical manner and we're not introducing some weird shapes to everything. The only reasonable way I have of holding this die, because of its diameter and size and everything else, is in this 4-jaw chuck. And now you'll notice that the stone isn't able to pass all the way through the die and out the other side. And we know that's important. So what I am going to do is I'm going to align the die so that the holes that I'm wanting to run the grinding wheel through to sharpen this aligns with this groove that the chuck runs in at the back here, that the jaw, runs in. That way, that'll allow me to come all the way through and off the other side of the die. Depending on how you may be wanting to hold this, it may be important that you have an adjusting screw in your die. Not all of them have that screw, but we're going to be using that screw to prevent the 4-jaw chuck from crushing in the die and making it not be round anymore and be, it'll be uneven if that happens. So I've carefully adjusted this screw to support the die when it's right at its nominal diameter. Next step is for me to dial this thing in to the 4-jaw chuck. I'm going to want it running true, of course, both radially and axially. This generally takes a decent amount of time and involves some curse words. So I'm going to get that done off camera, and then we'll bring you guys back in. Well, that's dialed in now. You can see I have 2 dials. One's measuring the radial and one's measuring the axial. And as I spin through here, they're both staying awful darn close to 0. I'm happy enough with that. So I've decided I'm going to sharpen this face. I think that might possibly be the easiest for you guys all to see. And so what I'll be doing is setting my wheel up so that it comes in again all the way out the back, because it falls into this slot back here that the jaw lives in. As far as setup goes, I do have this sensitive work head dialed in side to side, so it's running 0, and up and down, so it's running 0. I also have my machine spindle dialed in, running 0. Now, we're not dealing with any tapers here, and so we're not concerning ourselves with the center height of the spindle matching the center height of the workhead. We're essentially going to use our height at our leisure to adjust it to get the wheel exactly where we want it. But before we get that set up, we do want to make sure that all 4 of the tooth faces we plan on working on are on index to each other. So I'm going to check that next. It's reasonably important that all of our tooth faces, when we index to them, are close to the same 0. Now, I don't expect them to be perfect because these features that we're touching up were machined into this die prior to heat treating. So any warpage or weird stuff that went on is still going to remain afterwards. But I do want to see that they're close and not out by a mile, because then we would be really deep into one tooth face before we even contacted the next one, and that really wouldn't work very well. So here we are on our first tooth face, and we're at 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to come off the dial, we're going to index around to our next tooth face, come back in, and we're like 5 thou out there. This tooth, well, it's up around that 5 thou mark again. This tooth's closer to the 0 that the first was. And then our first tooth. So there's nothing we can do about that. We're talking a difference of approximately 0.03 of an inch from the highest tooth to the lowest tooth. I don't see that being a huge problem. I think that we'll just go ahead and work with that, and I'm sure it'll all work out in the end. However, now that we know this, I'm going to index around till I get to one of the tooth faces that is sticking out more. That way I can touch off on it, and I won't be making some monster deep cut when I come around to a high tooth, which would be what would happen if I started with a low tooth, touched off, then indexed to a tooth that was sticking out more. It'd be trying to grind way too much all at one time. Hope that makes sense. When I last used this machine, I had the speed set up for a 6-inch diameter wheel. Of course, I need this little mounted point to go significantly quicker. So I'm going to change my gearing around in these pulleys and get a bit higher speed set up first. I got my speed changed, and you'll notice right away the sucker's really flying now. I have not calculated the surface feet per minute of the stone and all that. I suppose you could. There's probably a book somewhere that might help you with that. I've just sort of learned to go by feel on these things, and I'm pretty confident that that's going to work decent without the wheel actually exploding from over spinning it. So I'm going to move into position here. You can see we're just touching off. Going to give it a tiny bit of feed. Careful to pass completely through. Let's see if we can look in there and see where we're actually grinding. We can make any fine adjustments if we need to at this point. I'm struggling to see exactly where we are and are not grinding in here. So I'm going to paint the face of this tooth with a little marker. Then we should be able to see much more clearly where we're actually cutting. So as for touching off and minimum skimming, I'm pretty happy with this, with the exception of a little spot here that hasn't cleaned up with that initial touch off. The rest of it is cleaned up, looks like right from the edge of the tooth to well back behind the tooth face. And so that means we're going to be recreating the rake angle on that face pretty darn well. So I'm going to go ahead and start indexing around, doing one tooth after another now. So I've run into a small issue. The wheel that I was using is actually too big to clear the part of this adjuster pin that sticks into this bore. So we can still do this. We just have to switch to a smaller wheel, which is going to clear, that will clear that pin. You can see here where I actually smoked into that pin just a little with that first bigger mounted point. Now I'm going to come in with a smaller one, which will allow me to clear it. I'll just have to be ever more vigilant about maintaining a decent rake angle on the face of the tooth. So I need to touch off again. I'm going to rotate around to the next high tooth of the 4 and touch off on it. So again, I'm getting some marker on there because I'll kind of be coming in blind, but I do want to know before we get going if I'm recreating that rake angle decently or not. I'm all painted up with marker and I am going to touch off again. And let's see how that looks. I'm decently happy with that. We're touching from the tip of the tooth back at least to the bottom of the tooth, maybe a little past there. I think that's pretty decent. I think that's going to maintain our rake angle well. Now I'm going to start working my way around, indexing in and out, and we've got approximately 3 thou that we have to take off the highest tooth before it's down to the same height as the lowest teeth are. And so we're going to get that, and then we'll give it a little more just to make sure everything's good and fresh in there, and then we'll take another look. So here's our tooth faces, all nice and cleaned up. It's a little difficult to hold this to show you, but I'm hoping you can see that that's freshly ground right there. And of course, all 4 of the tooth faces are the same. Now, I will be the first to admit, you're not going to be using this method to take out massive chips, or, you know, if there's teeth missing altogether, you know, you're pretty much out of luck. But if you just want to freshen one of these up and make it cut freely again, this method works great. And as long as you are careful with your setup and you go at it easy, you could do this many, many times before you run out of material to actually sharpen here. Well, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate that. And we'll see you guys in the next one.